Oi, oi, alright, how's it going? I'm Grant, you're you, this is Doodle Review, and we're gathered here today counting down what I think are 10 classic alternative albums turning 20 this year. These records all came out in 2004, and we're going to go through 10 of the best, starting at amazing and arriving at classic. All of these are straight bangers, I'd say. And I was inspired by this kind of NME article, and yeah, I don't know, Kanye and Madvillain are in there, so it's not all a bust, but the rest of this just seemed like, I don't know, pandering to get as many backlinks and ad sales as possible, whereas here on this channel we don't fuck about. Alright, so let's get into it. At number 10, I'd say Elliot Smith, From a Basement on the Hill. 2004 saw the release of this final Elliot Smith album, a posthumous release after his sad death just the year prior. I think the record does suffer in the way a lot of posthumous releases end up suffering, which is that the custodians of the estate are usually not as stringent as the artists themselves would be when it comes to choosing like what makes the final cut. As such, this is definitely a bit overcrowded, and it also features a lot of experimental production and composition from Smith, which maybe doesn't always feel fully formed, but to me that's also kind of part of this record's charm. Coast to Coast, Pretty Ugly Before, Memory Lane, even King's Crossing are all songs that really stuck with me, and of course it also includes Fond Farewells, which is to my mind maybe one of the best Elliot Smith songs of all. At 9, I'm putting Feist and Let It Die, and it's a little out of step with the rest of this list, but I didn't really want it to be a complete sausage fest all up in this video. Technically, the second Feist record, this was the first that properly launched her career, and I think it's quite interesting because Feist, particularly her early work, has been quite strongly associated with that whole kitsch, quirky, pixie dream girl acoustic pop aesthetic of the mid to late 2000s, but I don't think that's a really fair representation of her music at all. This album in particular showcases many sides to the artist, from the pop to a little R&B influence to a sparse folk. There's a lot in there. For years I didn't know that song Inside Out was a Bee Gees cover, but when I found out, I don't know, it kind of just added points for me. Alright, at number 8 we're going Madvillainy. It's there. This is the record that I will take for the big publications because I don't think you can argue with it, and despite its wide acknowledgement these days, I'd still kind of put this in the alternative bucket. You know, the average dude on the street likely wouldn't have this on their radar, certainly not then, and I don't reckon now either. Madvillainy is a project bringing together the dearly departed MF Doom, all caps when you use his name please, and Madlib. It's one of my top albums of all time. It's a rare project that kind of creates its own universe by bringing like cartoons, comics, gangsters and pop culture together with a rich musical texture that includes just as many mandolins, flutes and accordions as it does classic boom bap beats. If you haven't heard this album, like, do yourself a favour and get into it. At number 7, I'm putting Secret Machines, Now Here Is Nowhere. Secret Machines are kind of a lost and very underrated band of the early 2000s, possibly because they shared little in common with the overall indie trend of the time. They may have had like a little bit of that Interpol darkness, but really they were more of a kind of prog, even krautrock influenced band with long, winding instrumental passages and wide-ranging arrangements. This is a really self-assured first album. It starts with the massive sounding First Wave Down, which builds over the course of nearly 9 minutes. The throbbing bass acts as its centre of gravity and pulls everything towards it. The trademark of this band are huge sounding drums with massive distorted bass lines laying the foundation for then jangly guitars and synths that work together that can create either really punchy tracks when they wanted or long form psychedelic excursions. Check it out. At number 6, I'm going Sultans Shipwreck. Now, okay, we're getting to the gold here. You want to be paying attention here. The Sultans are a band led by John Reese. If you don't know John Reese, aka Speedo, aka Slasher, aka The Swami, you're in for a treat. The guy was in underground alternative heroes Drive Like Jehu, then punk old school R&B crossover band Rocket from the Crypt, gritty punkers Hot Snakes, the Night Marchers, and this band The Sultans. And this project is sadly one that receives the least attention in all of the Swami catalogue, which is a shame because Shipwrecked is one of my absolute favourites of his overall body of work. Where many of those other projects are all about subverting genre expectations, the Sultans are just straight up punk, rock and roll. Every song is catchy, short and sharp. The record is played live and the dude has one of the crispest, most perfect Telecaster tones I've ever heard. The track Walk of Shame has one of my all-time favourite, most inventive chord progressions ever. Get into it, seriously. Bonus recommendation, John Reese's other band Hot Snakes released a great album in 2004 called Audit in Progress. At number 5 we've got Melissa Aftermath. I've been talking about this album a lot lately. I classify it as one of the hidden Queens of the Stone Age albums of the early 2000s because it was produced by Chris Goss, includes some Josh Homme co-writes and features almost everyone from the band on it at that point in time, plus members of Kaya, Smashing Pumpkins and Failure. This is truly a hidden gem for alternative rock fans. Aftermath is a super charismatic frontwoman with a knack for great hooks, and yeah, the album just has bangers. Don't sleep on this one. And if you're intrigued at the prospect of hidden Queens of the Stone Age albums, check out my video on the topic linked below. It's a banger, to be honest. At number 4, Death From Above, 1979, You're a Woman, I'm a Machine. This was an absolute mind blower for me when I discovered it in the mid 2000s. I was just properly getting into music at the time, so even though I now know that others had done it before, just the idea that these blistering tunes came out of a two-piece and the amazing riffs were coming out of a bass and not a guitar just like turned my world upside down. Sebastian Granger brings the energy with his banshee screams and fast but tight drums, and Jesse Keeler's riffs can switch from face melting to in the pocket grooves in the time it takes to receive a slap to the face. The album is truly a tour de force. Many have tried to copy it and every single one of them has failed, except No Substitutes. At number 3, Alux, Future Perfect. This is a project that brought together Greg Edwards from the would-be alternative icons Failure, had they not lived up to their band name and completely imploded in the late 90s. It brought together Edwards and at that time relative unknown Carla Azar on drums and bassist Eugene Goreshta. Failure have since reformed, and Azar has been getting the recognition she deserves as one of the coolest, most unique drummers in rock today, playing with artists like Jack White. Goreshta, I think, is now in prison for drug trafficking, but we won't get into that. Future Perfect was the first Alux album and is a must for anyone into alternative rock. On this album in particular, the easiest comparison I think I can make is that they kind of sound a bit like Radiohead when they return to rock arrangements around the Hail to the Thief era, but heavier. The guitars are more up front, grittier, and sometimes just straight up noisy. Azar's drums swing like crazy, and Goreshta's sweet falsetto makes for just some amazing hooks. I challenge you to not listen to the opening track Turnstile Blues and not be drawn completely into the record. At number 2, the Icarus Line, Penance Soiree. Man, here we go, one of the most chaotic, wild, alternative punk rock albums of the era. Whenever I talk about Icarus Line, to make it easy, the comparison I use is they sound like Funhouse era Stooges blended with the weird shit on Black Flag's My War, Slip It In, with a touch of the Stones' rarely seen but very much there evil streak they had in the late 60s, early 70s. This album is a tornado of riffs and rock freakouts. It's willfully confrontational, kneecapping any hooks as they emerge. It just does not want to be your friend, and it's incredible. This to me is a stylistic template of what great rock should be. It's loose but tight, aggressive, swaggering, and totally idiosyncratic. This one's wild. Check it out. Number 1, I'm going Mark Lanigan, Bubblegum. I had to put this at number 1. We're quickly approaching the anniversary of the passing of the Night Porter himself, Mr. Mark Lanigan, a truly gutting loss when it came to light. Lanigan had a presence on record that is just unmatched, and it wasn't just the deep gravelly tone of his voice, it was something else, like an aching soul just under the surface. Bubblegum was the first solo Lanigan album I ever owned, and I must have worn this CD out. As a Queen's fan, the draw initially was that almost everyone from that gang kind of features here, but what kept me was the eclectic perfection of its track list. Whereas I used to be all about the kind of dark, driving methamphetamine blues or Sideways in Reverse with its massive roll call of musicians, I've since come to really gravitate to the more stripped back numbers like 100 Days, Strange Religion, Head. This album is an absolute classic. More people should know about it. Hopefully, if you've got this far and you haven't already, you'll check it out. Alright, 10 best alternative albums for 2004 done. What do you think? Anything new in here for you? What would you add? What would you remove? Give me a shout. Subscribe, share some thoughts, show some love, or just hell some abuse in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, mate. Bye.